So a very good evening to everyone. Namaste, everyone. We all at PSC welcome you all warm-heartedly and wish you a ga- very good day today. So on behalf of the PSC Project Statecraft team, I, Divya Jain and Ishan uh, would be here and would be extremely delighted to welcome you all and host this MC for this panel discussion, the lovely gathering that we all are here for. Considering this a highly significant event focused on sustainability and planetary health, we have invited esteemed panelists for uh, the insightful discussion, and we're very lucky to have most of them on board already joined us. And yes, Ishan, are you here? Can I add you also on the spotlight?
Today, we gather here to delve deep into the interconnectedness, human health, and the health of our national systems that support us. Our event, organized by Project Statecraft, aims to ignite a thought process among the youths, empowering them to drive sustainable practices and develop healthier planets.
The need for this dialogue becomes increasingly evident as we witness the challenges posed by climate change, environmental degradation, and the impact of human activity on our planet's well being. The Earth faces unprecedented trials such as resource depletion, loss of biodiversity, deforestation, and a lot of issues like pollution. These not only threaten the environment but also impact human health, as we all are aware of, and alongside economic development and social well being.
Sustainability at its core requires us to meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It calls for a paradigm shift from a linear consumption-driven economy to a circular regenerative economy. Our event-themed youth-led Nudges for Life and Planetary Health aims to highlight sustainable and healthy living practices at both individual and global levels. We believe that by extrapolating sustainability from a micro to a macro level, we can collectively shape a more resilient and thriving future.
The event provides platform for experts, stakeholders, and general public to engage meaningful dialogue and address the issues and key challenges that we all have been facing. I now request Mr. Ronnie to address the gathering with the insightful key address. And
yeah, thank you. Thanks. Since I was given a 5-minute slot to just give some opening comments, I've made a few 5 or 6 broad headline notes, which I think normally in today's distracted age, if you, I'm not good at talks because I think to hold people and hold attention past 5 minutes takes a bit of time. So firstly, great, congratulations for having this kind of quorum. And it's just frankly, extremely inspiring to see all of us as the younger generation taking on a responsibility, especially on a topic, which for most of us, it would mean almost like somebody else should be doing this and not us. So I just have 4 or 5 broad points as I kick off this, and I hope I can connect with you all on them. One, I've seen this working from the time when I started off being in work. Most of us go out there thinking, I'm one, can I really make a difference? And I think the message everyone needs to take away here, especially for this forum and for what you're planning to do, it is individual efforts that actually cumulatively make a difference. You do not need to be only in a position of authority today. I think the social medium, the approach to everyone, the ability for us to be able to influence, the ability for us to be able to question is very, very high. So the first takeaway just on a macro basis is do not underestimate the impact of what you can do. You got to go out there because you individually and all of you all collectively can make a difference, and it's not a minority. The second I would like to say is you got to take the lead. Because again, these are evolved topics. When you talk about life and planetary health, you feel it has to come from the government, it has to come from institutions, it has to come from world bodies, the whole global setup. And so therefore, what is the ability? I can only give you an example. We run a university in Mumbai called the Atlas Skill Tech University. And I had the head of one of the top 4 consulting firms and one of the top 4 audit firms to come in and lecture a classroom of 150 young people, to talk to them about what were the careers of tomorrow. And within 2 minutes of that conversation, all the class raised their hands and said, stop. We don't want to hear from you what are the careers of tomorrow. We are going to tell you what are the careers of tomorrow. Because frankly, we're studying it. We know what we want to do tomorrow with our lives. We want to know what is the influence. You have to take the lead on this. You have to create that level of awareness. You have to set the goals. You have to set the narrative. And only then will it happen. If you're following the narrative, you won't be able to make a difference. So second is take the lead. The first one is absolutely and totally you can make a difference. Now, third, education for a lot of people, and the entire premise of learning and the ability, I would just say today, the job ecosystem in the world is going to come from the new sectors, the sector of this. So while everyone is suddenly getting threatened by a new one called artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, of course, it'll have its positives and negatives. Unfortunately, what happens is when you have such a new technology, what first happens is the negative parts come in first, because the people who really want to make a lot of money or monopolize want to come into the business and start doing that. So unfortunately, these things form their own cycles. But here again, if you all have the power of knowledge and you have the power of education, you have to be able to use this not just with statistical data. Today, for what you want to solve in this realm of environment and planetary health, you will need incredible communication skills. You will need to be able to be articulate. The soft skills of what you all do here and what you'll learn is going to be of a very, very critical importance. Fourth, I've experienced this. I think there's a disturbance. If somebody can mute their mic, somebody's unmuted their mic, if they can continue to mute their mic. Yeah, I think Vaishnavi, if you can just unmute your mic, please, because you're the only one unmuted on this thing. Fourth, I would just say, we have a foundation and we work in rural India. And I think we have to include the rural, because the ambitions that one has seen there, the aspirations that we see with the rural youth, they also want to do eco-friendly things completely. No longer do we put electric pumps when they want to get their water done. It's all about solar. No, even in water for irrigation and everything that they want to do there, they are very, very, very open to the environment context there. And I think as you all as a group debate, I think understanding the element of community and collaborativeness and inclusiveness from the rural part, I think is also going to make a difference. So number one, you can make a difference. Number two, not only that, but you'll have to lead from the front and not assume that these are too many broad topics there. Number three, learning education is important, but use that with soft skills. Use that because this is going to require communicative power and not just statistics and information. And fourth, include the rural youth also. So I'll end by saying there's a lot to be done. You need to be ready that a lot will change as you're making these things happen. Nothing is going to be set in stone. So while you're out to do all of these, things will change. You'll have to deal with that change, look at it positively, but the beneficiaries are all of you all. And that's really where it hopes. So as opening statements, I just wanted to keep it more macro. Hope that connects. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much, sir. So with that, Ishan, I think it's time to invite our moderator and esteemed panelist for the discussion. Right? Are you all excited by then? I would just like to introduce Bhumi, and I think Bhumi would, feel free to introduce all the people who are here with us. So on the panelist, as a moderator, we have Bhumi Sharma, Miss Bhumi Sharma. I think most of you all might know her, and she's quite famous for her work in the past 5 years. She has been a great contribution to the field of environment sustainability, and she's currently the national focal point for Unify. That's a very new agency of the United Nations. Right? Am I audible? Sorry. Okay, amazing. Right. So yes, we have Bhumi, and I request Bhumi to just invite our esteemed panelist Feel free to ask for any support. We may share with the panel discussion now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Divya. Namaskar, everyone. I am Bhumi, your moderator for today. Today, we have a distinguished panel of experts who will shed light on the critical issues surrounding sustainability and its impact on human health. So without further ado, let me just introduce all the panelists to you. So today we have Ms. Marian Sinha, SDG Finance Officer at UNDP India, Mr. Tikesh Bisen, Public Health Specialist Surveillance at PATH, Ms. Seep Agarwal, Social Impact Analyst at Generation Unlimited with UNICEF India, and Alka Kelkarji, Director of the Climate Program at World Resources Institute, India. So I would like to thank all of you for being here. And today's discussion will revolve around 5 crucial agenda points, which are the interconnectedness of human health and the health of natural systems that support us, the impact of climate change and various kinds of pollutions on human health, lessons learned from COVID pandemic and their implications for future policies on health and sustainability, the importance of youth engagement in the fight for sustainability and planetary health, the role of technology and innovation in promoting sustainability and planetary health, and of course, the need for multi-stakeholder engagement for these topics. So let's begin with the first topic, which is the interconnectedness of human health and the health of natural systems. Alka Kelkarji, who is an expert on climate change, I would like you to invite light on this.
Lakshmi, your challenge kya tha, wo ek baar se samajh lena, then we can.
Thanks, Bhumi. Should I start? Great. Well, thank you so much, first of all, to Statecraft for inviting me. Whenever there is an event about youth, I feel very kind of hesitant to tell them what to do, because I always find that it is the youth who are always best informed, most motivated, and actually very positive and energetic. Whenever we talk about long-term climate action scenarios, we talk about 2050, 2070, 2100, these kinds of timelines. There will always be senior people in the room who will say, I won't be there in 2050, but ... or I won't be there in 2070, but ... But all of you will definitely be there in these kinds of timeframes that we're talking about. A child who is born today will be barely in their 20s by the middle of the century. By 2070, they will be barely 47, the age that I am. So definitely these are timeframes which are very relevant to the audience of today's event. In terms of the topic that you spoke about, which is the connections between our health and the planet's health or the environmental health, I just wanted to start by identifying a couple of points. One is that, on climate change, in a country like ours, in a country like India, climate change comes on top of many other challenges that we are already facing. So it's a little different from a country like, say, Germany or Italy, where many of you might have heard the news just this week. Italy got 6 months of rainfall in just 1.5 days, in just 36 hours. And this rainfall fell on ground that was very hard because it had not snowed, the previous winter. So, the kinds of flooding that has been seen in Italy this week has been something like a 1 in 100 century event. In Germany a few years ago, when there were deaths from flooding, it was something that was unheard of, unthought in a country, that there would be these kinds of losses due to natural disasters. But in a country like ours, we are facing so many challenges, whether it is nutritional challenges, poverty, clean water, energy for development, and a lot of these climatic factors come on top of the challenges that we are already facing. So it becomes what in the IPCC language is called compound effects and cascading effects, and one thing adds up to another thing. In the pandemic particularly, and again, you all have come of age during the pandemic. I don't need to tell you, how sort of radically life-altering that phase was, the lockdown phase and others. But in the pandemic, one of the interesting things that happened was in 2020, there was also a prolonged monsoon withdrawal, which made conditions quite moist and humid in India. And as a result of this, locust infestations, which started from Africa, reached all the way across the Middle East, Pakistan, into central India, almost up to Bhopal and Mumbai. And this is because the surveillance that was normally done in the border areas in Rajasthan got stalled because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown. So this is how you have normal weather patterns interacting with erratic changes, interacting with new kinds of pest or disease infestations, and with our health, with our agriculture. So that was something that I wanted to emphasize about how climate change brings compounding and cascading effects. The last point I want to make is really, on this particular point, is really about sometimes there are inadvertent consequences. When we don't understand a system fully, or when we don't take into account the linkages with other systems, we may introduce certain interventions that create their own inadvertent consequences. In climate change terminology, we call this maladaptation. That is, we've done something to solve a problem, but we've created another problem as a result. And the example that I want to give is that of our forests. Some of you might have heard that just during when the pandemic first started, when the COVID pandemic first started, there was a disease in Shimoga district of Karnataka state where I live called monkey fever disease. And this was because forest guards were going into the forest, and there was a particular kind of tick-borne disease that was coming in. And affecting people through these people who ventured into the forest. So as our interventions increase into natural areas, into forested areas, these kinds of human-wildlife interactions can take many different forms. Lantana, for example, I don't know how many of you have seen the new Bangalore T2 airport terminal. And there are these statues that are made out of lantana. It looks like bamboo, but it's not. It's a much more invasive species with very pretty flowers that we grow in our gardens. But once it takes root in a forested area, it doesn't let anything else grow. And our forest laws, which say that you should not cut down anything, you should not burn anything, goes against a lot of the traditional ways of keeping these things under control. So now if you have a forest fire, it will burn everything. So you can't do that. But because of that kind of non-traditional, but more kind of, forest management type of forest control that is happening, the lantana has taken over everywhere, and it grows to more than a human's height. And elephants don't get anything to eat in the forest, so they come out and they raid the crops, the sugar cane and the paddy crops of humans who live outside. So these are just some of the examples by which climate change, the kinds of choices that we make with development and our health, have many different interactions. And so solving any one particular part of the problem also has to be taken into account the traditional wisdom of the communities who live closest to these resources and their understanding of what the best solutions might be. So let me just end with that, and happy to come back to another question. Thanks, Bhumi.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kelkar, for that important reminder about the interconnectedness of all these different aspects of climate change and human health and the impacts on other aspects of our life. So we'll definitely get back to you with another question at the end of the discussion. Now moving on to our second topic, let's explore the impact of climate change and pollution and other environmental factors on human health. Ms. Marion, as an expert in sustainable development and finance, how would you describe this impact?
Could you repeat, please, the question?
The impact of climate change and the various kind of pollutions and other environmental factors on the human health.
I'm not a human health specialist, but I'm a sustainable finance specialist. And on general sustainable finance development, public sector and private public partnership should support innovation, which can help us environmentally and socially towards some new kind of industry which are more sustainable, more respectable of human and of our environment. That's one very important point. It will come from innovation. We need to find a new way of consuming, new way of producing. We can see around us that we cannot no longer do what we used to do, try to do it cheaper, not recycling, not throwing a lot. So we see that as a society and like business have their big part of responsibility. We see that there are changes that needs to be done. And these innovations are quite complicated to finance as they are more risky and they will take, especially if you speak in terms of social challenge, the profitability is more risky, slower, and probably lower. So there is a support need to be done to financial sector to accept the risk and probably also to reward the risk taking and the financing of such project when sustainable targets are reached. So that's mainly the mechanism of sustainable finance and how we can incentivize private sector to support this kind of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marion. And thank you so much for pointing out that you are a finance expert. So I would also like to revise the question a little bit and then again, poke you with another question, which is, how can we then mobilize resources for the health industry and the climate industry and push them to work together, closely together, so that we can achieve all the SDGs and can reduce the impact of the climate change on the health industry, through innovation and finance?
So helping innovation, mitigating the risk with the private financial sector. So if I think public-private partnership, PPP, is a very important factor to help the financial sector and innovation for sustainable development. And we see since a decade, we see more and more sustainable funds which are initiating new action towards new type of projects. So sustainable finance is quite young topic. It's not that young, but the area is developing since a decade and it's not that new. So, but it's catching up. There is more and more finance towards this, and also in the development sector, the landscape has changed quite a lot in the latest time. So adaptation is always important.
Thank you so much, Marion. I'm not an expert on all the SDGs, but I for sure know that we have a huge gap between the resources available and the implementation of such programs, because we have a huge finance gap in the ACE, if you know, Action for Climate Empowerment sector too. So hopefully we can achieve more resources and mobilize more public and youth to take actions towards more sustainable activities. So thank you so much. And moving forward, I would like to invite Mr. Dikesh Bisain, who is a public health specialist. So I would like to ask, sir, that how do you assess the impact of climate change and environmental factors on public health? And what are the key challenges in addressing these issues?
you, Bhumi, and thanks a lot, Statecraft, for inviting. So, just to build a context, I will share my screen. Bhumi, can you please allow me to?
So your audio is cutting out in between.
So, Bhumi, just allow me to share my screen.
Yes, definitely. If the host can allow Mr. Dikesh to share his screen, because I think he will need permission.
Certainly. Taken
Okay.
care of. Thank you.
Perfect.
So, thank you. Hope my screen is visible to all.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is.
So, I'm skipping because I think I am assuming that majority of us are aware about the path. Just snippet of it. PATH is an international organization and we have presence in more than 70 countries and we are operational in India for more than 40 years. We are discussing about impact of climate change on human health. So first we need to understand why it is happening. So though majority of us are aware that and youth are very familiar with the technology and chat GPT and other things, but still I would like to emphasize on considering the population explosion, we are living closer to the environment. We are there are lots of biodiversity loss, and there's change in climate change and land use impacting, and there's a more global travel. Is to tier 2 and tier 1 cities are now accessible for international trade. So all these are impacting, and if you see that because of deforestation and habitat loss, it's increasing a conflict between human and animal. So nowadays you are seeing that the tiger attacked and other animals, and because of this increased conflict, there is a high possibility of transmission of disease from animal to human called as zoonotic diseases. Second is because again climate change, in result of climate change, there is a increase in waterborne and vector-borne disease. Also, I will cover in subsequent slide as well, and pollution and urbanization, rapid growth of urbanization, crowding in city areas, and recent COVID pandemic has also realized that we need to strengthen our city surveillance system. And see, this is the circle. Here, if we see more extreme weather conditions are resulting into air pollution, and because of that, asthma, allergens, are disease are increasing. Second is change in vector ecology. Because of that, dengue cases as dengue outbreak are reporting in the place where initially dengue was not reported. Now in that geography also, dengue malaria cases have started emerging. Because there is a change in weather pattern, disease like cholera, which is supposed to be that endemic for only pure geography, but now in last October, October in Maharashtra also there are 13 cholera outbreak reported, and it more than 13 casualties were reported in other parts also, UP also and Bihar also. So the disease which are supposed to be contained, but now because of change in climate change, they are seeing these changes. And related to World Health Organization has also said that more than 250,000 additional deaths due to climate change, and it's impacting on human health. And if we talked about the financial implication, so 2 to 4 billion per year we are expecting there's a financial implication due to climate change. And coming to the question raised by panel moderator, how do you assess the impact of climate change? So if we need to assess the impact of climate change, first we need to do the epidemiological study, which will correlate because of climate change. So everyone is saying climate change is impacting, but how it is impacting, we need to generate the evidence. And how we will generate the evidence, we need to demonstrate some epidemiological study which will say that in a particular geography, because of this climate change, vector-borne disease has increased, waterborne disease has increased. So that kind of correlation we need to establish. Second is we need to strengthen our disease surveillance system. So at the initial stage, get about the impending outbreak. So how we will do that? Because youth are now technocrats, so they need to come up with the disease modeling tool, which will help us in predicting outbreak at the initial stage. We need to generate early warning signals. So with the help of early warning signals, we can identify in a particular geography there is a possibility of waterborne diseases like cholera, vector-borne diseases, and again One Health concept, because as I mentioned, because of biodiversity loss and other things, deforestation, conflict between human and animal has increased, and COVID is also one of the diseases which is transmitted from animal to human. So recent WHO report also says in future we are expecting more zoonotic disease outbreak. So just for that, we need to strengthen our surveillance system, and the technology will play important role with the help of different disease modeling, different technological solutions. Yeah, thank you from my side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bisain. It was a very insightful presentation. I definitely knew that there will be increases in the vector diseases and so on, but there were so many other things that I wasn't aware of. And like, I think it is very alarming that we are at this point that so many other impacts of climate change have to be faced by us, and especially the young people of today's time. So also really appreciate your insights on how we can tackle these with the early warning system and all those. So hopefully our government and other people around in the industry, health industry and climate industry, can implement those successfully, and we can tackle and achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. So moving forward to my favorite section of the panel discussion, because it is directly related to youth, and me being a 21-year-old water and climate justice advocate, I'm definitely very passionate about involving youth in today's creating solutions to today's problem. So I would like to invite Ms. Seep Agarwal, who is a social impact analyst. So I want you to elaborate on what role do you believe that youth plays in driving sustainable change, and if you can also support this discussion with some example of a unique youth-led initiative which was very successful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bhumi. Am I audible to everybody in the room? All right, perfect. So hi, everybody. Good evening. And thank you so much to Statecraft for having me. And I think completely echo with everything the co-panelists have said here as well. I think it's so important, as you know, the opening remarks were to put young people right at the center of all of the decisions we make, all of the programming that we do, and make sure that they're not bystanders to, you know, fight for climate change or the programs that we design as multilateral agencies or foundations, but it is done with them on the table as equal stakeholders. At Yuva, what we do within UNICEF India is work with and for young people to enable spaces for, you know, sort of improving access for young people and their leadership skills. How can we ensure that they have more access to social impact opportunities, curricula, as well as, you know, opportunities for making sure that, you know, they're at the same table as private sector champions or as government policy makers? And how can we make sure that there is very intentional space created for young people during every part of the process? I think quick examples that I would like to share from our very recent engagement on Mission LiFE with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in India is that as UNICEF and as Yuva, we've launched the Meri Life campaign and supported Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change in India in developing a portal and a mobile application that enables ministries, state departments, government departments across India, one to, you know, sort of share and report actions that they are taking towards Mission LiFE in the lead up to World Environment Day 2023. but also a mobile application that's citizen facing. How can young people within their homes take very small actions that are aligned to mission life themes such as saving water, saving energy, reducing the use of single-use plastic? And how can these very small actions that they can take at the individual level or at, with their friends or at a society level contribute to this larger movement? And how can they become climate champions in their own right? You spoke about innovative technology as well, Bhumi, as one of the, sort of pillars of our conversation today. And I think what we've done at Yuva is made sure that young people have been part of the design process of this mobile application that is now being used by lakhs of government departments and citizens across India. The Meri Life portal at our end was launched on 3rd May. And since then, we facilitated more than 7 million participants have been reported via the portal. More than 4 lakh events have been conducted across India to sort of aid, support, and encourage this movement and this fight for climate change that we are undergoing right now, because it is a global crisis. And if only we can all come together and make sure that these multi-stakeholder partnerships can be facilitated at every single level, if we can make sure that private sector champions it, if we can make sure it's completely aligned to the policies that are being rolled out right now, and if we have those moments of recognition for young people at every stage, only then can it be a successful sort of partnership as well. And like I said at the beginning, I think really making sure that it's innovative technology, easy to use, accessible for every young person on the board. And we're just not thinking of a young person sitting in urban India with access to a mobile phone when we're designing this technology. How can we make sure that if there is a platform to aid this fight for climate change, it is accessible to the last mile as well, to young people from marginalized backgrounds? I think a quick sort of example I'd like to share, because this is a story that really inspires me as well, is from Shaumya, who is a UN Yuva youth advocate in India. And Shaumya is on a mission to protect the olive ridley sea turtles, which are threatened by poachers, pollution, and climate change. And what Shaumya has done has trained a cadre of around 100 youth volunteers for the conservation of these sea turtles and other wildlife on a sustainable and scientific basis in different parts of Orissa in India. He's also sensitized local fishing communities regarding overfishing and the protection of marine life. And through more than, in the past year, 250 beach cleanup activities, more than 15 tons of plastic has been recycled, including polythene bags, discarded fishing nets. Shaumya is driven by a sense of climate justice for the welfare of the young people and the generations that will come after him. And I think it's so inspiring to make sure that people like Shaumya are encouraged, but also are part of this decision-making process and are also enabled at every stage. Shaumya is currently working on a sensitization program pilot to promote organic farming in the tribal community for biodiversity conservation. His work has also been featured in the Limca Book of Records. And I think this is just one of the many youth India advocates that have done excellent work. And I think there are so many more stories waiting to be discovered, waiting to be unearthed. And what I hope for is that at our level, Meri Life grows into the climate movement that we all need in India. And if there are young people within your context as well, please do encourage them to also take these actions, which they can very simply and easily within their own homes, and encourage more young people within their community to do that as well. And I think Meri Life is not just limited to young people. So any and every citizen in India, as long as we're all joining this movement. But yeah, that's it for me, and happy to come in later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I completely agree that the youth needs to be made aware that they need to do mindful and deliberate utilization of resources instead of mindlessly and consuming things to protect and preserve the environment, like our Prime Minister also addressed while launching the LiFE mission at COP26 at Glasgow. So thank you so much. And moving towards the end of the discussion, I do have one last question, but given the limited time, I will open this question to all the panelists. So I want to know all of your opinions on the multi-stakeholder engagement on these topics, like in the sector of climate change and health we are already talking about two sectors together. So how can we mobilize these different stakeholders to work together and create impact?
Maybe I can start trying to answer that, and I'll answer it with with one particular example, which is that around food loss. I don't know how many of you know that globally every year how much food gets wasted between the farm and the plate. Do you know, like out of 100%, what percentage of food gets wasted? Does anybody know? Any guesses? You can put it in the chat box or. Bhumi, do you want to take a guess?
My guess will be very rough guess because I have no idea, but maybe 40 to 60. I'm giving an estimate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is 40%. So that's globally, and that comes to $1 trillion lost every year just because of food losses. And in India, in particular, a lot of the food loss that is happening is because of things like farmers not having enough warehousing or cold chains, refrigeration for fruits and vegetables, or they don't have information about when the market prices or where they should sell. So, they just have to sell whenever they can. Or it may be that the produce can be processed and value can be added to it, but that needs some amount of capital, some amount of investment in food processing. And a lot of it happens because of consumers like us. So I think what this gives an indication to is the multi-stakeholder that you spoke about. It's consumers, it's producers, there is policy, there is investment. So Marian represents the finance side of things. All of these have to come together to solve a problem. And the first step in solving the problem is to first know what is the size of the problem and what is the target that we want to achieve in order to make an impact. So just to make the global into a very local picture, I live in Bangalore. And someone did a study of weddings in Bangalore, and they looked at around 500 wedding halls. We typically have these wedding halls which people rent to do, and then everybody served food. And do you know how many tons of food was wasted in a year? 1,000 tons. And this was high calorie food that somebody, again, the organization that did this estimated that it could feed a simple Indian average meal to 26 million people. One meal that could be provided from that 1,000 tons nearly of wastage. So think about how you would, as all of you young people are, who all would you need to bring together to solve this problem? You would need to, of course, look at the vendors, perhaps, who are providing the food and provide it in a way that it is not wasted, less waste happens, or is then taken forward to someone else to reuse, maybe pig pens or other such things. Then you would need to talk to the wedding hall owners themselves, but you would also need to bring about some kind of social change. The families of those who are getting married want to show that this is a time of their generosity. They want to feed everybody. They want to make sure that no cost was left unmade. So there's a lot that depends on what other people do and what is socially acceptable. So here again, there is an example of the multi-stakeholder bringing people together to effect social change. And the example that I want to give, and I'll end with this, is that of an initiative called Vidyut Rakshaka, which my organization WRI India did with the electricity utility in Bangalore. And what they looked at was an example actually that was first pioneered in California. That is, when you get your electricity bill, you don't just get information about what electricity you used and how much you need to pay the company, but you get information about what your neighbors are doing to save electricity. So you get a kind of report card. That is, you've done well, or someone else has done better, someone else is a community champion. So it's a lot like the SEEP, the app that SEEP spoke about. And what it gives you an idea of is something like a social networking thing, but for reducing wastage, for reducing overconsumption. And when you get to know what other people are doing, you're yourself motivated to try to keep up. So these are just some of the simple examples to break down the multi-stakeholder, engagement into simple activities. But I think many of the examples that have been shared here today are really pointing to the way forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Albert. So I think this is very important. So whenever we talk about impact or how to mitigate that impact, the intersectional body is important. So first, if we think about at the top level, at national level also, but how first at state level, the state in which we are living, at the state level also, there is a state level task force exists for climate change. District level task forces. So how many of us aware about this thing, and how many us raise the voice? What is the decision has taken? Is that particular committee is mandated to meet every quarter? So is that meeting is happening, and what was the minutes of meeting? What policy level decision has taken for my district, for my city, or by my state? So awareness need to generate from that level. So in that case, infodemic will play an important role. In COVID also, we have realized that there are lots of miscommunication has spread. So for that, first we need to focus on infodemics, and for infodemics, we need to involve different departments. So let's take an example. Meteorological department is generating heat alert for next week, means for next 7 days, stating that in a particular geography, this will be the temperature. But is that particular information released from meteorological department is reaching to a health department? And if we reach also each health department able to percolate to the end level, the beneficiary level, community level. So first we need to understand the system. Once we understand the system, we need to identify which are the stakeholders involved into that, which are the key stakeholders involved into that. Once we identify the key stakeholder for this particular activity, these are the 5 stakeholders. One stakeholder is involved, so how that stakeholder will speak with each other. So there will be the data sharing mechanism will be there. Once that mechanism will establish, so in all this process, why I'm bringing this, youth need to be aware about, so they can ask to a particular person or particular authority stating that is that state task force meeting is happening in our district or in our state. So what decision has taken now, heat action plan. So I think all of us heard about the heat action plan in Gujarat, right? So Ahmedabad has prepared heat action plan. So is the city in which I am residing, is there any heat action plan is prepared, or if prepared, implemented? We are talking about green and health resilient facilities. So what does mean by green and health resilient facility? So starting from our building also, the space in which we are residing. So for example, it's a multi-story building. So is there rainwater harvesting system is in place? Is the solar panel installed? So at least we can reduce the impact, heat related impact. So this kind of awareness, so bringing that awareness, multi-departmental involvement is there, multi-sector involvement is required, and which department need to be involved, that awareness need to be required. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelkarji and Bisenji. I definitely agree with both of you. And I liked the example Kelkarji gave about food, and I completely agree. A lot of food is wasted, and we need to make people aware and also involve everyone, including the families who are organizing such events, to the vendors, to the people who are consuming these. And then the people who are also collecting the remaining leftover food. How can that be processed and disseminated properly? And coming to Bisen's point, it is, I think it is crucial that people are made aware about who the person responsible is, because most of the time people don't know who is the stakeholder responsible for which activity or which agenda item. So I think if the public will be aware about which all stakeholders they can hold accountable, then I think there will be more action and quicker solutions to the problems, because then they can be held accountable. And definitely agree with establishing a mechanism or a platform where all these multi-stakeholders can engage together and share best practices. And like I think we all together need to focus more on monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, because a lot of times people initiate tasks and they move on to executing them, and they say they implement them, but nobody is monitoring the implementation and how much actually in reality on ground the policy or the project has been implemented. So this year, the focus for ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment, is also monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. And we have a discussion in Germany where I'll be going next month. So hopefully I'll get more insights on how I can monitor all these progresses and implementation in the national context. So thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful insights. It was a very, very, very informative panel discussion. There were so many things, new things I got to learn from all of you. And this is now the most awaited session, I think, because people will be there with a lot of questions for you. So I'm opening the floor for questions. So the audience can ask any questions. They can drop them down in the chat, and I will take them from there. Or if anyone wants to speak, feel free to raise your hand. Okay, I see a hand. Dharmendra Kumar, if you want to ask the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, I have not questions, but I have some, because I am working as a grassroots level. So I see village level climate system mechanism at community level. Agar if compared to other program, child protection committee mechanism system is functional. Water sanitation and hygiene committee mechanism is community level functional. But in currently situation, we cannot see community level mechanism that work for the climate. So I think we need to advocacy with the stakeholder, state level concerned departments, that formation at community level mechanism for the only for the climate system strengthening. Second things, then we compare to other program, number of program, but there we are strengthening to institutionalization level training. But climate, even child protection, we all component, I add to all department. There are one session for only child protection. Just I am giving an example. So I think I need to comprehensive mode strengthening and linkages with for the institutionalized training. If organize the PRI training, if organize the ICDS training, if organize the health training, if organize the social justice empowerment training, then need to one session required only for climate. Then communities, PRIs, and aware. Also, then will be effective implementation and effective mindset set it required. So I think this is my suggestion. I think कितना मैंने समझा पाया और नहीं, but मैंने जो I am जो feel किया मैंने वो आपको share किया. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dharmendra ji. I definitely agree that there is an urgent need to include climate discussion in all the discussions, because climate is an integral part of all the aspects of life and is interlinked to all the aspects, water and climate. So if any of the panelists want to add on to this point, yes, Dr. Bisain.
Yeah, so Dharmendra ji, I am completely agree with you. So National Center for Disease Control at the central level, the governing body, which drives this climate change and human health program. So there is a national level program also, National Program for Climate Change and Human Health. And at state level, at district level, even at the village level, ASHA level, there is already a training module is ready, and the cascading of training will happen. So because this is a completely new program and COVID has impacted this implementation or operationalization of this program, but very soon at the district level, from district level to the block level and block level to the village level, there will be the training, and at the village level, Asha is our front face. So there is a plan that on this all climate related aspect, let's take the example of air pollution, heat related illnesses, vector-borne, waterborne related illnesses. She will get trained, and then she will work as a mascot, community mascot, to generate awareness. So community level, there are Jan Arogya Samitis all are there. At the urban areas, there are Mahila Arogya Samitis are there. So these are the community-based volunteer associated with the health system. So they will also get trained, sensitized on this aspect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bisain. And could you please share more information about these training programs in the chat, so I can also check for myself later on, because it's very interesting that we already have such programs on such levels. So I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I will just assume that our panelists were so great that they left no room for questions. Okay, I do see Divya's hand. So Divya.
Thank you, Bhumi, for recognizing. First of all, I'm so grateful for all the panelists to, keep it very comprehensive, to present their insightful views on all the topics that we discussed so far. We have received a few questions on our deck, as we invited a few of other people from the audiences. I would like to speak about the same. The very first question is to Ms. Marin. Could you describe more on the role of sustainable finance in driving investments towards climate mitigation and adaptation? And how has your experience been so far working in UNDP India or other places where you have seen how greatly youth as a force has been implementing, diverse measures to combat climate change and to mitigate all the efforts, be it with respect to finance or without? If you could throw some light on that aspect, that would be really helpful for our esteemed audience to, hear or learn about more.
Thank you, everyone. Good question. From my experience, as I said, it's a fairly new area, sustainable finance, but the key concept is to finance ground projects which can change daily life of people across the globe. I've worked in sustainable finance in Africa and in India, and it's about innovation, finding resilient solutions for local population, to mostly in rural area also, and in the cities. So it's a new area. Public banks are supporting it with new system, green bonds, this kind of new finance mechanism to channelize investment to sustainable project. The reality is that also innovation and sustainable and social projects are quite risky, low return on interest. They can be profitable, so that's something different, but they are slow to implement. That's reality. The best is to manage to combine private fund from VC, venture capital, and also a little bit of public money. And it's developing currently. We have more and more finance in this sector, help with some local tax and some CSR regulation worldwide. And I hope we will have more money in the upcoming year to finance more projects. But it's about really every project locally which have an impact and who can make a difference locally. That's my main opinion.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for that. Bhumi, can we take another question if that's okay? Do we have time for that?
I think we can squeeze in time for one last question.
Okay. So this question is dedicated to Ms. Seep. The question says that what strategies and approaches can be employed to empower the younger people, the young individuals, to take actions and actively contribute to sustainable efforts? I believe most of the insights were covered in while ma'am was speaking, or while ma'am was talking about her points. But if you could throw some more light onto some different elements or aspects of how we can include the younger generations, because they all are pretty excited to work on such arenas and agendas, and most of them you can see joining us for today's panel discussion as well. How effectively can, in your perspective, can you see that we can include the younger generations for making change?
For sure. Thank you so much for the question. And I think that's a great question, because it's a question that I think we're also constantly grappling with and trying to evolve and learn with successes of different programs and learnings or failures of, certain interventions as well. I think one of the things that's really worked in terms of positioning programs is one, of course, making sure, like I'd said, that young people are seen as co-creators of the program and not as beneficiaries. How can you work with young people and not for them only, right? And how can we make sure, so for example, even when we were developing the app last year, young people were the power users who first tested the app, even before the prototype was out. And there were certain recommendations and insights that they came up with, which actually made the app so much more stronger. And now when, Meri Life is launched and it's being, let's say, amplified by the Ministry of Environment, they feel equal stakeholders and shareholders in the process. They feel like, okay, this is something that I tested last year and this is so cool. To create that journey for young people is something that's really, really important, so that, they don't feel like they weren't part of the process when this was being envisioned and imagined in the first place. I think another thing, just in terms of programming, that we've learned is that, since we work on a lot of, like, the platform is seen as a volunteering first platform, how can we aggregate different opportunities and make sure that there is access for young people to volunteer for climate, and, position volunteering opportunities not just as selfless acts of service or community service. And not just that, of course, it is something that we're doing for the world, for the country. But how can young people also gain skills from the process? How can they also be rewarded and incentivized for their participation? And how can rewards and incentives actually be relooked at, not just as monetary tangible rewards, but as capacity building? Can you give the young person a chance to have a one-on-one coaching session with a field expert? Can you get them mentored one-on-one? Can you make them feel like, okay, I did this, and now these are reward points that I can use to actually learn much more and volunteer more and go back into the field? And that kind of intrinsic motivation that this process generates is unmatched, right? We've seen that happen within young people that we work with directly. We've seen that as a good practice being replicated across the countries that UNICEF works in. And I think it's such a fundamental core principle to abide any innovative technology solution today, with especially anything that is youth focused. So yeah, I think these are a couple of things. And of course, all of this is stuff that we are learning continuously, and it is an evolving process. So there are, learnings that, keep coming around every, single week now with Meri Life out and about. But happy to, I think, share more, and with the larger partner ecosystem, probably work on a larger conversation as well, where we can collectively talk about these learnings and leverage them for our individual programs as well in our contexts.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. Thank you. So I think with that, on behalf of all the participants, the entire team of Project Statecraft, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to each one of you for sharing valuable insights and contributions during the enlightening panel discussion. To all the panelists, your experience, your expertise, and passion for interconnectedness of planetary health and seeing the natural system as our own has been inspiring and thought-provoking since the very first minute that we had you all here. And the discussions around the driving, discussions around how important it is to include the younger individuals for driving change has potentially inspired me on the same page to make an impact in the long run. And with that, I thank you so much for that. And if Sudharma, you have something to speak in short, you may do so. We have the stage for that.
Okay, will do. So first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who's come out to the panel today. I know a lot of them have dropped off today, considering it's always 6:30 on a Monday. But everybody who stayed for the panel, who stayed for the opening remarks, participated in the policy parley, I'd like to thank everybody. But more importantly, a special thanks. The tone of the event was set very well by Mr. Ronnie Screwvala right at top, because he spoke about a lot of things that PSE was fundamentally founded on back in June of 2020 when we first publish our first research paper, publish our first article. And some of the things that really stick with you as a young person is when somebody with so much influence and so much experience and exposure says that it is individual effort that makes a difference, and that we have to take the lead. And as a young person, as somebody who's only 23, I like nothing more than to hear that my path or my actions have consequences that can impact the growth of the country, the growth of the world, or just the well-being, not necessarily growth. So that set a very good context and a very good setup for the event. I thoroughly enjoyed the panel discussion. I've been to numerous of these discussions where they talk a lot about things that are of relevance, but somehow feel distant. But today, as an audience member and not as an moderator or as a panelist, for once, I felt like this panel and the conversation happening on the panel was calling my name, and calling the name of the youth and calling upon them to take action, to be responsible, to be accountable, and to be proactive. If I had to sum up the entire discussion in 4 words, I think those would do very well. There were things brought up about how the long-term climate timelines are very relevant to me as a citizen, as me as an individual, because I know I will be my father's age in 2050, but I see the active lifestyle my father leads right now, and I know that I want to continue to be able to do that when I am his age. There, again, there was a lot of contextual discussion about India as a country, the global system, even smaller levels like at a community level, district, state level. A lot of conversation was had in those lines as well, which was, I think, for each of us that looks at a problem from a different angle, will look at each of those points that were made from a different perspective and feel the relatability to that particular point. So that was really nice of the entire panel to cover all possible aspects that we were looking at in who can work in what area. I think Marion, brought up something really important, is that we need an interplay and we need a structure. That is still a question that we're grappling with. We need a structure where there is more accountability and more participation from people who are actually able to finance sustainability and finance sustainability in a sustainable way, as tongue twistery and how ironic it may sound, but it is still a requirement because things do not move without financing, and we need somebody to move this ship. I think she brought in a lot of perspective from the youth perspective that she, because she's actively working and engaging youth, and a couple of ideas that they're working with over there, like Mary Life app, is something that I think at a personal level, I would really like it if somebody made something like that where I can showcase what I'm doing for my community and showcase it to other people who are doing things for their respective communities, learn from each other. This is, I think, the most primitive and fundamental model of peer-to-peer learning that we can see. And just by taking away the phrase of peer-to-peer learning, the youth are suddenly more engaged. This is almost friendly competition in a way to do better than somebody else. And I think if you want to drive innovation at a grassroots level, I think you need to include those at the last mile. And I could not second that word better. So overall, I think it was a great learning experience for everybody who was a part of this, me included, despite despite all the panels I've attended in the past. I think every time I attend a panel discussion, I come back thinking, wow, I learned something new today. And that's something I think we want to carry forward. And because Project Statecraft was built on the ability to learn and ability to bring change as a young person. You learn from your peers and you teach your peers to bring change. So as in my closing remarks, I would say this event brought great insight to everybody and showed us a path where we can have tangible, measurable outcomes from our own actions instead of having to rely on some higher administrative power to do that for us. So for that, I thank everybody for taking part in this. And that's it from my end.